Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. My name's Josh. On today's show, we're going to have a chat with Miss Niki Bell from Sacramento. Welcome to the show, Niki.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Woohoo!
Whoa, you've got some energy. I'd love to hear more about you. All right, so who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so my name is Niki Bell, and I keep it very simple. I represent investors, and I typically am their strategist or falls under investment relations. I've been doing it for over 12 years. I'm USA and I'm international.
Okay, copy. Wow, you've got energy. Let's first start there. Like, holy moly, you blew my hat off. Where does that energy come from? Because, you know, like we're doing the interview. We're Friday. My time, it's, you know, it's almost 3 o'clock. How do you get that energy? How do you get that personality? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from experience. I think it comes from struggle. I think it comes from having goals, having dreams, having a vision, and knowing that it starts within you. So no matter what your circumstance may be, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, you have to have the right mindset, the right mentality. And nothing can mess up your day or mess up your moment because you are in sync and you are in alignment with the universe. In order to be in alignment with the universe, you have to elevate yourself. Okay. And that begins with a thought, which turns into a feeling. And you've got to be consistent with that throughout the day. You know, whether it's your banker calling you, your mama calling you, it doesn't matter. Your ex-girlfriend ringing up your phone, it does not matter. Nothing can stop you from being joyful and happy. And that's how you show up in life. You have to show up in life. And that's my attitude. Like, no matter what's going on, I have to show up. That's me taking self-responsibility for my life, right?
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
See, that's pretty cool. Now, you work in investor relations, so you're working with investors and you're helping them. And we'll get into the deal side of it. Like, are you a motivational speaker or do you have have you written a book or do you do like yoga stuff or like, you've got this incredible like personality and energy about you.
Well, I'm very spiritual. Okay. Without getting into religion, I'm Buddhist.
Okay.
But we already come with an extra sense of wisdom and awareness, right? Our environment is everything, but that environment comes from within you and then it's projected physically. So when I used to work with companies and represent them, their mindset, it was like too much head trash going on, right?
Ooh,
I want $1 billion. Niki, get me $1 billion in 24 hours. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, the mindset, but I can't change that. I can't change that. What I can do is change me so that I can attract what I want, that in which I want. And what I want are people who make sense, right? What I want are people who are contributing to humanity or the environment, but without the poverty thinking. Keep that in mind as we continue to talk. You know, I want certain things and certain people to be a part of what it is that I'm trying to do, right? At the same time, contributing to what they're trying to do. So it's very, very important. And how do you bring value? Do you bring value when you're just on the phone and you're just like, oh yeah, whatever. And you've got that kind of attitude? Do you bring value when you're like, yeah, let's go, let's get it done? You know, that's what you bring to the table. I mean, if nothing else, pay me for just being Niki, because we could be making deals all day long, because no matter where somebody is in the world, I have those conversations. I build those relationships all the time. I know where people come from, what their life's been like. I listen to them. I listen to understand, not to react. And we need people like that on our teams, right? We need that. But when money is involved, I noticed that it was different. Everyone was just kind of like linear and just didn't really have anything interesting going on. And it was just driving me nuts. And I'm like, how do I get people to understand, you know, where it's not a competition. It's how can I make a contribution to what I'm doing and to others, right? And we don't think that way. Like my major when I went to Michigan State was poli-sci. Everyone was competing, right? They were being lobbyists and getting their interns. I mean, whatever it was that they were doing. And eventually they wanted to run for Congress. Well, from early on, I decided it's not a competition. It's how can we see each other as brothers and sisters in this world? Because we are all one. It's one love for me. And bringing that into business is really, really important. You know?
So this is so cool. How do you go from Michigan State to Sacramento, right? Like, how does that happen?
Well, I grew up in Turlock. That's even worse. Turkey Town.
Okay. Yeah.
Here in California. And then I had a goal. I had a dream. I was like, I've done all this stuff. You know, I would do cross country, track. I worked for the police. So people that want to go back and forth with that, good luck. And then just a little inside scoop. I do have a brother on death row in San Quentin. So I grew up with the gangs, and I grew up with professors, teachers, you know, coaches, police. So I have a wide range view of the world. And I also grew up in a foreign home. My stepfather was not from America. So I already had the stepping stones, you know what I mean, to being great and fabulous. And I was like, I'm going to go from Turlock, California to Michigan and make something of my life and find a way to be able to express myself, right? And find out what I want to do in life. And it was a beautiful journey. It was a beautiful experience. I lasted 10 years in the cold, had my kids, my family out there. Yeah. And then I came back to Sacramento, or I came to Sacramento. So yeah.
I lived in Michigan for a little bit. I moved to Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a Florida boy, South Florida, you know, board shorts, flip-flops, and silk shirts, right? To freaking chase the girl up to Michigan, and lived up there. I made it one season, and then I moved back, moved my ass back to Florida, right?
Which season was it? One season?
It was cold.
Oh, okay. So it was cold.
It was cold.
Well, it's cold from September to April or May.
Yeah, I moved in the summer, and then I moved back in like February or something like that, February or March. Yeah, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah,
Plus, that was before I was married, so happily married, 3 kiddos, and happily a Floridian. I love Florida, and I heard California weather's great too. So
yeah, it's beautiful, sunny outside.
So, all right. So Niki, you know, as you're doing this, you move back to California, and how in the world did you get into investor relations?
Oh, so the reason why I got into investor relations, I had my political campaign in Michigan, or my political career.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to run for Congress, actually. And I said, okay, the revolution begins with me in my home, not out there. Because I was grassroots organizer. I did the whole women's leadership thing. I led movements, literally led movements, hundreds of people. And I worked on equal opportunity, civil rights. Oh yeah, I did it. And so I said, okay, either we're going to continue to work with nonprofits, right? Or we're going to do something where there's money so that I can give back, so that I can contribute to the causes that I represent. And that was the main thing. That was one thing. The other thing was I had been through so much struggle in life, homelessness, domestic violence. And I said, the way out of poverty is through investments, period. Like point, as my teenager says, point blank, period.
Point blank,
period. No argument. And also to not be a victim of circumstance.
All right. So we've got to dig into this. You mentioned the poverty mindset. What does the poverty mindset look like?
Poverty mindset, because I deal with so many people from all over the world, including investors, of course. You could have so much money, but still have that poverty mindset, like penny pinching, like just these barriers and these blocks. And because I deal a lot with the mind, you know, overcoming that hard wiring that we tend to have, I can see it, you know, I can see it right away. And it's like, it's devastating for me because I want to take, you know, I want to like save the world, but you can't save everyone sort of deal. And sometimes when people start talking, I'm like, you're so blocked. Can't do this, you know, or they look at, a lot of times in other countries, they look at Americans as like the savior.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got to get Americans on board. You got to get these American investors on board. And it's like, no, but it's so hard to get into the American market.
Mm.
No, it's not. You know, you have to believe, and you have to know that that's not what it's about. Like, we're all human beings. Don't put us on a pedestal, the 1%. Don't do any of that. Treat each person like your brother or your sister. Be professional, of course, but know that we're all in it to win it, you know, period. Point blank, period.
Point blank, period. Yeah. All right. So you were going through, own life struggles, and you're saying the way out of poverty and poverty mindset is to invest my way out of, and you're like, I'm either going to do nonprofit and impact, or we're going after some big money so we can make a big impact over here.
Yeah.
So what was your first like foray into capital, investor relations? Like, how did that look? What did that do?
For me, it was a lot of like the in-person groups. For me, it was real estate, where I learned cash investments. You've heard that, where, oh, you don't need your own money. You can get it from whoever, your uncle, your friend, and you can do deals that way. And that was fascinating. I mean, I would go to these conferences and just sit there, notebook after notebook, just writing notes. And it was amazing. But the person that brought me in didn't believe in me, and so didn't mentor me. So everything I've done has been, particularly in business, has been on my own. I'm self-taught, I'm self-learned, self-made, everything. And a lot of people would say, oh my goodness, you have to have a mentor. You have to have somebody. I have a spiritual mentor. I have a sensei. But no, in business, I don't. What I do, though, is every single day, I'm developing a new skill. Every single day for like an hour. You take an hour, you develop that new skill. Okay. Very, very important. And at the same time, I'm looking at what's going on in the industries. So what happened to me was I saw all these different particular industries. So real estate was my first introduction. And then it was something else. Okay. Some startup doing whatever. Met them online, people around the world. And I noticed that they need some basic things just to get started. They need their proposal. That was before pitch decks. They need at least their proposal. Okay, so how do you write a proposal? I wrote one myself on my, my vision, my dreams. And I actually got an investor from another country who was interested. And see, we go back to mindset. I didn't think it was possible. So nowadays, when someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I've got this great thing going on, I'm looking at mindset, like, how are they thinking about this? Do they really think that they can achieve that goal? And, because I remember where I was. I always remember that. Every day is a new beginning. It's fresh. And that's how you have to stay in this industry. I get investors who call me now, and they're like, oh my goodness, Niki, you're still in the game. And they just start laughing. Like, it's just the funniest thing. And I'm like, yes, I'm still here. And they're like, good, keep doing the work, so we don't get all the crap deals. I'm like, and it could be Bob, it could be John. I'm like, okay, so when are you going to bring me on? When are you going to hire me? They're like, oh, let's talk about that another time. You see, there's a double standard, right? But it doesn't matter. What matters is what you're doing. Don't worry about what other people are doing or what they think, because that one person may have something else totally going on. There may be something in their life where they're not even moving forward. So how would they bring you on? But they do like to have a really valuable conversation with you. Yeah. And at the same time, they're referring you to somebody else who is just as valuable, if not more, who will bring you on the team, who will pay you, who will do this and who will do that. And so that's what happened. And I started getting people who said, oh, I was referred by so-and-so, could you help me? Investors. And I was like, wow. And the last number of years, it's changed where, a lot of times a broker or a finder is paid by commission. And so I get investors who actually advocate for me. And they'll say, so you brought me this, this company. They've got some revenue. That's great. Have they brought you on? I said, well, it's like back in the day, where it's commission, whatever. And they just want to see who would be interested. They're like, no, not interested unless they bring you on. They'll get on the phone and they'll tell them that. Unless you bring Niki on as your CFO, your strategist, investors relations, don't really care, I'm not dealing with you. And I'm like, wow, that's how much, I guess you could say, weight I carry. And I don't need to be known. I actually like not being known, because when you're known, when you walk around and you're like, yeah, I just invested in that deal, it was like, 15 million, or it was $100 million deal, you get so many people knocking at your door, and they don't all qualify to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to be known. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started in the real estate game, right? You started learning about other people's money and how to find and connect these kind of deals. Like, tell us about the first, big deal that you worked on, and some of the details there of how you went from, running your own poli-sci stuff and your own struggles, and you went through the process of homelessness and domestic, violence and such, to your first big deal. Talk to us about that.
So I wouldn't say it was like a big deal, because it got bigger later on. But I would say that I learned the difference between residential real estate, which is very, very, I don't want to use this word. It's very nickel and dimey, I guess you could say, nickel and dimey, and then there's the commercial real estate. And that was like fascinating, because that just opened up my world. And so when you're doing the residential, it's very much, every single dollar counts. And, you have to know what you're doing. Okay. You have to know what you want to invest in, the area you want to invest in. Is it going to be a cash deal? Is it going to be like double mortgage? I mean, what? And then later on came the hard loans and this and that, which I don't deal with. So it was like more smaller deals. And then it turned into the commercial real estate. And that was just fabulous. Learning the difference between, your NDAs, which is like a marriage license, and your NC NDAs or whatever, non-circumvent, things of that sort, to be a little more specific. And then you learn that there's people who know how to make a deal, and then there's people who don't. Mm-hmm. So that was a whole nother journey, that was really interesting, because for me, whatever you say on the phone should be on the contract. Whatever you say on the phone should be on the contract. So if you say, I'm going to give you 5% up front and then 5% on the back end, and I'm relating this to like pre-IPOs, which I got into later, then that should be on the contract. And a lot of times what was said and discussed was not. And so what I learned was going through, reviewing, editing, and I just started ripping things up. I mean, I've got my red pen and I'm like, nope, not going to work. That's not what we discussed. Send it back. To the point, like even nowadays, I'll say, give me a draft. Give me a draft of what we discussed, and then we'll go from there. All
right. So in the process of being investor relations for 12 years, give us some metrics, some ideas of some numbers, or maybe amount of capital that's come through, or AUM, or give us an idea of how you've made a dent. Give us an idea of that.
So how I've made a dent is, number one, following the SEC rules, because I've been called out on that. Where, there's people who are watching you, FINRA, SEC.
Yeah.
You don't specifically have to have a license unless you are doing investment advising. But really keeping on tabs with legally what's going on, what you can and you cannot do, announcements that you can make or that you can't make, things of that sort. That's really, really important to me. And then I have my deals that I've made. You have the bigger end of deals, like over 100 million, which usually falls into, I want to say, more of like the construction industry, where they're building like these big, skyscrapers or towers or whatever, because it's easier. It's easier to describe it in that way, where we had some of our bigger deals. And then you have certain industries like your biotech, crypto is on the up and up now. Now we've got our NFTs. That's what's going on lately. Tech is really important. So it varies. It literally varies. And it can be anywhere from 5 million, like I said, over that 100 to 200 million mark that I've done. And the higher you go, the lower percent that I get back in terms of that. But really, I'm working for the investor. So that's money in my pocket, right? And that's more money in his pocket. And I'm following what he's doing. A lot of times some of my investors, they don't even know what a J curve is. They're like, it's not for like private equity. Like, yeah, but it's the trajectory of, what you've invested in, which is going to be on the low end at first. And then once it hits that curve and the investment matures, you're going to look at, a better return. So some of these things they don't realize, right? Depending on where they're at. I've had some that have invested like, I don't know, 50 in their portfolio, but haven't kept track. And I'm like, how can you not see that that's a problem? So I'm there to measure the risk. I'm there to analyze. I'm there to help them any way possible. But my main thing is building those relationships. So
What in this process, like what are some of the things that being in investor relations and seeing interesting deals and then working with investors? I would love to know some of your process of how you work. What do you do there? Like how do you decide who to work with, and then what could they expect to get? And
mhm.
then what have you invested in? Like have you found any cool deals that you've gone in, and what did that look like?
Yeah. So like I said, for me, when I've invested like crypto, of course, real estate, of course, um, nothing like really major. I'm usually underneath the investor and I'm advocating for the investor and making sure that that deal flows. And if I do invest, it's usually with a partner. Um, I did invest a lot in the beginning myself, but then there was mistakes that were being made because I was still learning. So I kind of took, a step back. Um, but for me, going back to your question, which was, I think I lost my train of thought. Say your question again.
Yeah. So one of the questions, so I asked, the second part was, and sometimes I should just go, here's the one question and then write it down and
Yeah,
go
here's
to
the
the
other
next
one.
one. That's my bad. All right. So in this, like I'm an investor and I go, Nikki,
Oh yeah.
I want you to help me. What could I expect, when working with you? Like what does it look like? What's your process? How do you approach
Mhm.
this?
So how do I approach it? Usually they come through via referrals,
Hmm.
which is like the best way. And I asked for two documents. I'm not going to say what they are, but I asked for two documents. I can tell if they are willing to give up those documents, if they are going to be transparent and honest in the process, because I have to verify that they are even investing, that they're an investor. There's that role like accredited investors, one that makes 250,000 to if they're married 350,000. To me, that's not an accredited investor at all. That's high risk to me because it's like, how much have you done before, right? So they've got to be making a certain amount, at least 5 million or more, for that to be considered even a possibility. And so they'll give me the documents, and then we'll have a conversation, and I'll say, so in your portfolio, you've invested in this, company A, B, and C. Where are the weaknesses? What is the trouble that you're having? So they have to have a problem that I can fix or solve. It's not just I want someone who's perfect, because I like to go in with my energy and be like, hey, what's going on here? What do we need to fix or whatnot? And so we take it from there. And they may have like 10 things that they want to do. And I'll narrow it to about two, to start off with like at least two things. And I'll focus on that. And I'll give a timeline of what's going to be done. My duties will be outlined. So they're either coming as in hiring me on with what they're doing, because sometimes they have a team that's involved, or they're just coming in and they're saying, okay, so what's your consultancy fee? This is what I need done. It's pretty simple. Yes, it can be complicated, but I simplify it a lot.
About how many investors do you work with at a given time, like client base wise?
Mhm. No more than like 10 a month.
Okay, so
And
you
I can
work with
handle
these.
10.
Okay, so you work with these groups, and you're looking through some of their portfolios. They've
Yes.
got to be high earners, north of 5 mil, and you're taking a look at what they're investing and what kind of issues. What kind of issues are you seeing that they might not see?
So a lot of them aren't paying attention to like their profit and loss. I mean, their loss and gain.
Okay.
They're not paying attention to that. And that's a really big deal. Meaning that they have a company who hasn't really been performing or underperforming, and they gave the investment 3 years ago. Yes, have they made their payments on time? Sure, but there's not really a gain in any of what they're doing. So that's one of the things that I look at. Also during the deal making time, how that deal is going to happen. A lot of companies come kind of like with these with it already set up, like how it's going to happen, how the deal flow is going to happen. Like, we need this amount of money and we will pay it back in 3 to 5 years. And they've got all the criteria. And, investors they don't go by that. They've got their own mindset of what they want. So my job as investor relations is to say, look, this is what the investor wants, not so much what you're presenting to us in terms of the finances. This is what he wants to see, right? And this is how we're going to go about it. So that's really, really important, because people already come with their stuff already made.
In participation, so, how does this compare, or how do you correlate this to like maybe a family office, someone, who runs a family office for someone? Do you participate with them, or are you running their family office for them, or are you, how do you,
It's more participation. And again,
Okay.
it's more building a relationship. Also sometimes having input on the deals. It just depends on where they want me. It's really important to have that relationship built in terms of what they're doing. And I deal more with private investors, and I deal more with angel investors, wealthy families. It just depends. They have to come through a referral, and they have to really want someone like me, because sometimes, they're pretty much set in their way and who they have. So it
Yeah.
just all depends. Yeah.
What success look like for you as you're going through these, processes, and, for the next 5 or 10 years? Like, how do we know Niki's winning?
For me, success looks like when I have, the investor, and I have people on my team, and they have that sense of urgency, and we're making deals happen in a timely manner. And it's not, oh, we're waiting 3 months or 6 months, right? Because then you could just go to the venture capitalist company. So I have a particular niche in what I do. And, I truly, truly am passionate about that part, because a lot of times it does take a while. We don't know sometimes what the investor's criteria is. This is what I get the feedback from a lot of companies. The financial industry is just like haywire. It's just, you don't know where you're going or what you're doing. And so by putting some parameters in place, being forthcoming, having the criteria in place, keeping track. A lot of times I use software to keep track of what's going on in the portfolio, make sure it's performing. Doesn't matter if it's debt, equity, capital raise, it doesn't matter. What matters is that deal, it's fluid, it's everything is fluid. So yeah.
Very cool. What kind of software do you recommend for other, maybe CFOs, investor relations? What software do you use, like that you'd recommend to other groups?
Well, to keep track for the companies, it just depends on each individual, but for companies to have that head count, and that I would say SaaS is a really big one. Making sure that they have SaaS in place, depending on what product and service that they are selling or delivering. In terms of, CFOs and investment relations, it just depends. It all depends on what your preference is. I can't like off the top say one in particular.
Copy. All right. So when it came to, from you, let's go backwards a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about mindset then. Is, investing your way out of poverty, what were some of the barriers you had before you can, start talking with people making $5 million and millions, investing a lot of money, like what was one of the mindset shifts you had to overcome in your own life before being able to talk to investors?
And the mindset shift that I had to overcome was, again, the poverty thinking, like, oh my goodness, is this even real? And I would say it's changed a lot from the investor standpoint, from 10 years ago to now. The values are different. It's measured differently. What you're looking at. I like investors that are are still wanting the business proposal because the pitch deck doesn't really tell us anything of what's going on. That's if you're in that startup space. Mid-market companies, it's going to look a little bit different, and same with your pre-IPOs. So it just it all depends. But for me, circling back to your question, it was the poverty mindset, and also one of the barriers was, and I think a lot of people go through this, is it because I'm a woman? You know, is it because of race? And so I really had to start working on mentality, because what you think, you put out there and you bring it back. So it's like, I need to stop thinking this way. And nowadays I'm like, money is energy. Money doesn't care about your race, your color, your religion. It's energy. And even investors some of them don't realize that. It's energy. It's all flow. That's what it is. And so that's really different for a lot of people to grasp, but it's very true, you know?
All right, let's dig in on that, because I've seen people, I've met some CFOs and CPAs who have absolutely zero energy. Yeah, they've done some wealth financially. All right, so if energy is money and it's just a flow, then why are some people who with no energy, why do they have money? And then some people I've seen super charismatic, and the most they've ever made in a year was 15 grand or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you equate that?
Now you're asking a spiritual question. It could be karma.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Cause and effect. Yeah. And everyone's karma is different. That's the best way to answer that. So if we go around comparing ourselves to others,
yeah,
then we're going to have the examples like you gave. But if you're not comparing yourself, that 15 grand for that person he may feel like he's rich, because it's also how you feel too.
Right.
You know, the other one that is just naturally is getting, deals after deals and money after money. That's his fortune. Could have came from a past life. That's his fortune. And so he may not feel he needs to do any extra, and that's okay. But you come across people who say, okay, I see that you've made a lot of money. Do you mind giving to this cause? And that's where we get into this sense of gratitude and appreciation for your society, for the people around you, so on and so forth. But eventually it may cross your path. Depends in this lifetime. It may or may not, where you get that extra sense of awareness of what needs to be done.
So then how do you control, or how do you increase cash flow, or how do you increase money if maybe, from what you're saying is maybe in the past there was some naughtiness that I had nothing to do with it, right? Like it was past Caterpillar or past Josh or something, like not that I fully understand that, but like I'm trying to, like, as a deal maker, how can I change the trajectory of my current life financially?
So that's a whole lesson. You have to sign up for a session. Okay, let me try to put it in a way that's understandable. Because it is energy, you have to come from within yourself, which we can call source or your divine being, and you match that frequency and that vibration. So even if you are a money maker, all right, that's great, but you may be around a bunch of people who are conceited, who are aggressive, and one day the thought dawns on you, I need to change my scenario here. I need to change my story. I'm not getting anything from these people. And if you look at human life, a lot of times we have gone through this at some point in our life. What's working for me and what's not working for me? And you start with that, you can start there, but it comes to you depending on what environment you're in, where you have to kind of like rise to the occasion. Mm-hmm. You may, for a woman, her husband might be sick and she didn't care, and all she did was spend money and shop all day long. Who knows? Or she ran a big corporation and then her health gives away. She's got heart problems and high blood pressure. So it will come to you when it needs to come to you on what you need to do, but practicing living in a high vibration, right? Being happy, being joyful, and money doesn't bring that, is much better being aware of that so that you can change it.
Okay. So as you're going through, these kind of business, what are kind of business deals? What's the perfect business deal look like for you? If I were to put it right in front of you.
Oh, okay. So a perfect business deal is, from the investor standpoint, um, picking a company that has revenue or the potential of revenue, because some people don't think that they need to really showcase that. Someone that has, we're looking at the company and they have all their ducks in a row, right? They've got their plan, they've got their deck, they have an infrastructure, because I can switch the hat and go in there and do that and like really change the infrastructure if it's a mess. But they've got really good infrastructure. They've got a really good team. They've got tech to back them up. Tech is really big, and digital, right? So they have all those things working for them. They have their marketing in place. That's going to be the big thing. Marketing is a really big thing, and their sales. They've got all of these elements that are going on. And at the end of the day, once the deal is closed, the lawyers are there with us to close on the deal. And in between that, we're making changes and we're doing what needs to be done to make sure we're good before we close on it.
Does it matter? Are you kind of agnostic towards what kind of deals or what size of deals? Like, are the minimums that you put, or are there industries also that you stay out of? So minimum, size deal, and then what kind of deals do you stay out of?
Minimum size deals would be like 1 million. Larger size would be like 200 million, to be realistic. And do I really stay out of things? Not really, not unless it's like too much. Like I went to a conference and it was like all about mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health. And I was like, no more. And so my investors were like, no more, it's too much. So if there's too much going on in one industry, we may decide to stay out of it. But there's not really anything. I'm pretty much open.
Okay, so there's no industries that you're not willing to explore, but as long as it's not too much mental health, you're right. Like it's not the same thing every day.
Not the same thing.
Copy.
And as long as it makes sense, it has to make sense.
Okay, so let's do this. I've got a deck of cards. Got some questions. Tell me when to stop. I want to ask you one of these questions.
Deck of cards. Stop.
Don't laugh at my cards. These cards are freaking awesome, man. Check this one out.
That was cool.
What's something about your life now that you would miss when you're 80?
Being active. So I was describing to someone my day like a couple weeks ago. And they said, oh, you're very rich. You have a very rich life. And I was like, yeah. That was awesome. So being active, going places, exercise is a really big thing to me. Taking care of my health, being around people, sociable, being accessible. Like people are like, you should not be so accessible. They're like, you are busy every moment of the day. I'm like, I know, but I love it. I just love talking to people, here, USA and around the world. I learned so much. And every time someone calls, I have a notebook. I'm just like writing, on what they're saying and what's going on. So yeah.
Very cool. So for people in the audience, what's a website or a place where people could go learn more about you and connect with you?
Oh, usually people find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or like through referrals or phone number. It's all on there.
Okay.
My phone number. That's how people find me.
All right. So, and they could go to Niki, that's Niki Bell. They could find you on LinkedIn. That's a good way to connect with you.
Yeah. They can find me there, or phone number.
All right. Is there any question that I should have asked you about investor relations or about, the work that you do that I should have asked you that I completely screwed up and didn't ask you?
What I'm looking for.
What are you looking for?
So I was having a conversation with a guy. He'd been in business for like 40 something years. I was describing to him, I was having a challenge at that moment. And I was describing to him my hardship. And he said, oh, you know what you need? I said, what? He said, players, real players. That is people who, doesn't matter what you charge. They know what you do. They've heard about you. They come, boom, whatever it is, tell me, because I don't want to not have you working for me, working with me, being my partner, whatever. You know, those are the type of people that I like. And I have a few in my life, and it moves mountains when you have those kind of people on your side who value what you do, who appreciate what you do, who know that your time is worthy, you know, and they pay you for it. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to, you know, commission or referrals or whatever. No, whatever you, and for women too, whatever you are doing out there, make sure you are getting paid for it. You know, I'm not a martyr of feminism or woman or even diversity, but I will say this. And when I say this, women are like, whoa, I can't believe she said it. No, you deserve to be paid for everything that you do, because you have a unique skill, a unique expertise that you bring to the table that others don't have. And so people need to take that time to get to know you and pay you.
Point blank done.
Right?
Right? Did I do it
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah, all right. Sounds good. All right. So, fellow deal makers in the audience, as always, if what our guests are saying resonates with you and it's something that you want to have a conversation, reach out to them. Their contact information will be in the show notes. Find a way to connect with them and maybe do a deal with them. If you're working on a specific deal that you'd like to come talk about on the show, or even talk to us about your journey as a deal maker, maybe some of the failures you guys went through, head on over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, and maybe get you on the show next. Till then, talk to you all on the next episode. See you, Niki.